Many of you might not know where the San Andreas Fault is locked. Many think it's the whole length and then the whole thing will rupture like crazy. The San Andreas Fault is locked in the south. Hashtag San Diego. And it's a ticking time bomb. What is going to happen when the fault breaks? So California is sitting on this fault that could change everything in just 2 minutes, because that's how long scientists are estimating the earthquake, the big one, will last. And the San Andreas Fault is one of the most studied fault lines on Earth, and probably the best known one, because everyone knows Hollywood, California, and they know of the earthquake risks, and they have been devastating earthquakes in the past. So this fault is basically a transform boundary between two of the Earth's largest tectonic plates, the Pacific plate and the North American plate. And they're grinding along each other or past each other at a rate of 34 to 50 millimeters per year. So you might think that this is not much, but this is quite substantial, because this is the speed at which your fingernails grow. It's a weird example, but maybe that gives you a little bit of an overview. So over a century, that adds up to 4 to 5 meters, now like 15 feet of stored displacement. And the San Andreas Fault is not moving smoothly. This is not like going like no problem. So the southern segment of the San Andreas Fault, that is stretching from the Salton Sea up past San Bernardino and then into the San Gabriel Mountains, is what is locked. That's a locked fault. This is how it's called. And that means friction is preventing it from slipping. Even as strain from plate movement builds up deep underground. And that's why this is so dangerous. And according to paleoseismic trench studies of that area and of the whole San Andreas Fault, this southern segment has ruptured in around 1690 and has previously ruptured in around 1450, 1180, and 1000 AD. So the average reoccurrence interval is roughly 150 to 200 years. And this means that right now, we are now over 330 years into what scientists say is a dangerously long, quiet period. So let's talk about the consequences. In 2008, the USGS and the Southern California Earthquake Center published what it's called Shakeout Scenario. That's a simulation of a 7.8 magnitude earthquake along the southern locked area of the San Andreas Fault. And it's so interesting. Everyone thinks it's the northern part or like the part around San Francisco, but it's locked in the south. And here's what their model came up with or revealed. So the rupture length, where it would rupture, and that's why basically whole California is at risk, it's approximately 300 kilometers long, and it's beginning at the Salton Sea and then propagating northwest towards LA. How long will the ground shake? Up to 120 seconds, like 2 minutes of strong to violent shaking. That is long, guys. If something's shaking for 2 minutes, this is really, really long. And what's the peak ground acceleration? This means up to 1.8 G in some regions. That means, guys, that objects could be thrown into the air. And let's talk about surface displacement. So there's lateral offsets of 6 to 9 meters. That's 20 to 30 feet. That is a lot. That is going on across the fault trace. And then, of course, with such an earthquake, we've seen it in the past, fires are going to break out. So they think over 1,600 fires in the LA basin alone. What about the water infrastructure? Over 1,500 breaks to major pipelines. Casualties, 1,800 lost, 50,000 injured, 300,000 displaced. Economic damage exceeding 213 billion US dollars, including lost productivity and destroyed infrastructure. So this is based on seismic wave propagation models, fault geometry, surface geology, and amplification effects in sedimentary basins like Los Angeles and the Coachella Valley. Because then we have like an acceleration of the shaking because of how the geology is in these areas. But now let's have a look why this segment in the south is so dangerous. So according to the Uniform California Earthquake Rupture Forecast, that's a long word, they call it UCERF3, the probability of a magnitude 7.5 or greater earthquake on the southern San Andreas Fault within the next 30 years is approximately 31%. The first thing, it doesn't sound like too bad, but 30 years, that's not a too long time frame. So it can also happen in 1 year, right? And 30%, it's like jumping off the cliff. If someone tells you you will land in the water with a probability of 31% that you land on the rocks, would you jump? You have to put it in perspective. But there's other faults that are active, like the San Jacinto, the Elsinore, and the Garlock Fault. But none of them are as dangerous as the San Andreas Fault. There's quite a few studies out that are using satellite pictures, like INSAR, as it's called, interferometric synthetic aperture radar from satellites that show that the crust on either side of the San Andreas Fault is deforming, but not slipping. So that is confirming that the fault is accumulating stress without releasing it. There's geodetic networks like the Plate Boundary Observatory, PBO, and the UNAVCO stations that are also showing a clear velocity gradient across the fault. So the Pacific Plate is moving northwestward relative to the North American Plate at nearly 5 centimeters per year, but the fault itself isn't moving at the surface. So it's moving underneath. So this is a ticking time bomb. Geologists are calling this this is the definition of a ticking time bomb. So let's dig a little bit deeper into these geophysics. There is a theory that's called elastic rebound. It was developed after this devastating 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So this elastic rebound theory explains how strain accumulates in the crust until it's suddenly released in a rupture. So a fault that is locked stores elastic strain energy, which then is converted into seismic waves during rupture. So what does that mean? I don't want to show you all the formulas, but let's imagine there's a 7.8 magnitude earthquake. What is the amount of energy that is released? About 35,000 Hiroshima bombs worth of energy. 35,000. Of course, guys, always, we cannot predict exactly when this fault is going to rupture, but it definitely will. And that's why it's so important for the scientists to monitor it. They have seismic networks to detect and locate microseismic earthquakes down to magnitude below 1.0. They have creep meters and strain meters buried underground to track deformation. GPS arrays detect like tiny crustal movements. And of course, Shake Alert early warning system that is active in California, Oregon, and Washington. They say it can provide up to 30 seconds of warning before shaking reaches populated areas. We've just seen it in the San Diego area quake, the 5.0 that just happened. Some people on their cell phones got a 15-second warning, so that was enough for them to get under the table, duck and cover. Some got it a minute after the shaking. So there's definitely room for improvement, but ideally 30 seconds is good. You can get away from some danger zones. And it allows officials, for example, to secure infrastructure, stop trains, shut down oil refineries, pause surgeries. I mean, it's tough. 30 seconds if you have an open heart surgery. I don't know. And also, like, of course, take cover. So now let's say the fault breaks. What's going to happen? So there's a rupture front that is racing across the fault with a speed of about 3 to 4 kilometers per second, radiating seismic energy along that fault line. And then seismic waves reflect and refract through different rock types in a different way. So some regions will be shook harder than others. In sediment basins like downtown Los Angeles, waves get trapped and amplified like in water in a bathtub. And that will extend the duration of the quake, but also increase the intensity of the shaking. That's not good. And then, of course, the infrastructure across the fault line, roads, pipelines, aqueducts will be torn apart. For sure, we will see the fires as mentioned, but also communications will be lost. Emergency response is going to be stretched thin. And the roads will be damaged. You probably won't even be able to reach certain areas. And, you know, people in California know that they're waiting for a big one. But for all this danger, Californians might still not be prepared. So according to FEMA, guys, less than 30% of households have emergency water for 3 days. 3 days only, they don't even have enough water. Only 17% have practiced an earthquake drill in the past year, like duck and cover practice this. Over 60% of buildings in vulnerable zones are not fully retrofitted. That is shocking. Over 60%. And overall, this isn't just a California issue. This is the same here in Canada and Oregon, Washington, where they can be hit with the big one, a megathrust earthquake, magnitude 9 or higher. So also, a rupture of this magnitude would disrupt fuel distribution, data centers, financial operations across North America. California is a large business hub. So the question is not whether the San Andreas Fault will break, it's when, as always. So could be in 10 years, could be tomorrow morning. And all people can do is be ready, not paranoid, but prepared. Secure your space, store food and water, learn how to shut off your gas if you don't have an automatic gas shut off. Build a go bag, talk to your neighbors, get to know your neighbors, sign up for a shake alert, because when the earth starts moving, the only thing more dangerous than the shaking is not knowing what to do. And of course, what to do is depending on the location you are in. Are you on the 50th floor of a high rise? Are you on a bridge? Are you at home? Are you at the water? Tsunami. So that's why, guys, you should subscribe to my channel, On the Pulse with Silky, to stay informed, because the earth never sleeps and neither should our awareness. So thank you for watching, guys. Please leave this video a like. And if you want to support the channel any further, check the links in the description. I have a buymeacoffee.com/silky site, and you can become a monthly supporting member of this channel. You'll watch behind the scene movies and private stuff. I have a playlist for my members. Check out the playlist. If you like what you see there, become a supporting member. And thanks for the supers, guys. You're awesome. And stay safe, be prepared. I hope to see you soon, and check out the video in the end screen. I think that's interesting for you guys. Bye-bye.